So I just shared my TV Paint window. Good. So I think you guys can all see that. And about an hour ago or so, I drew this squirrel. And that's what I'm going to animate tonight. But I have no idea what they're going to do. So I'm relying on you guys to tell me what I should have them do. So in the Q&A box, I want you guys to put in some suggestions of what this squirrel should do. Now, to get anything meaningful done in the next 3 hours, it has to be short, obviously. You all know about animation. So something that can be accomplished over about like 3 or 4 seconds or something at the most. It doesn't have to be like super meaningful, like or subtle or anything weird like that. It would be good if it was just some sort of physical action. It can have a prop involved. Yeah, like or to have a nut fall onto their head. We could do, yeah, something like that, something that just shows the animation. Because the point of this really is not, it's not about like cool style or sort of really specifically about sort of storytelling, although that's kind of unavoidable whenever you animate something, you're always telling a story. But the point of it is to kind of show you approach and show you thought process about approaching a piece of animation. I felt like when I was learning to animate, it's something that I wished I could have more of, is just standing over somebody's shoulder while they did it, just to kind of see the different steps that they took. Because you can read all the books that you want, but until you kind of actually sit down and do it, or you see someone do it, it's a little bit different. So that's kind of what I'm going to try and do tonight, is just animate through something and talk while I'm doing it. It's going to be scribbly as all hell, probably, just because, it'll be my first pass through something, and my first pass through something is usually pretty scribbly and pretty rough. So it won't be like super finessed and anything gorgeous like that. And, maybe I'll make a few mistakes and that'll be fun. And you'll get to see all that too. That being said, I should probably just introduce myself a little bit more. As Keely introduced me, I'm James Baxter. I've been animating for about 35 years almost, professionally, since 1987 was when I started, back on Roger Rabbit. I've worked at Disney Features and DreamWorks and had my own studio for a little while. And I worked a tiny little bit at Sony, and right now I work at Netflix as their director of character animation, which means I kind of like, I don't oversee everything, but I'm there as like artistic support and like to help all the creators that come into Netflix with new shows get the kind of animation that they want in their show. So I do a lot of talking with like the crews that we work with studios all over the world. So I do master classes and stuff like that, as well as helping the new shows kind of get up on their feet in terms of like animation style and animation design, and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I do at Netflix right now, which is a lot of fun because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And then one of the other things I do is not just talking to animation crews out there, is talking to guys like you, talking to students, going to schools and talking to new animators and new artists. Cool. So I'm going to actually have a look at this. Oh yeah, and as Keely said, kind of like in the second half of this, I'll be kind of looking at the Q&A, or Keely will help me look at the Q&A and read out some of these questions, sort of in the second half, so that I can just talk and answer questions while I'm kind of finishing off this piece of animation. But for the first half, I'll probably just be talking a lot. So I'm going to have, so put those questions in the Q&A, not the chat, because they'll kind of get lost in the chat probably. I'm going to have a look at this Q&A box right now and see. I do like to have the nut fall under their head. I kind of like that one straight out of the gate. A squirrel scolding us for not putting away the acorns properly. Karate chop, that's fun. Yeah, I like that getting hit on the head with the nut thing. That's kind of cool. I like that. I might just do that one. Yeah, it seems pretty cool. Yeah, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to do the getting hit on the head with a nut. Why not? Okay, so now my brain is kind of like boiling and kind of ticking over and thinking like, what am I going to do here? I've got this pose that I drew, and you know what? I'll probably just use it. You know, it seems like a pretty easy thing to do. So the first series of thoughts that kind of have to go through my head is like, what's going to happen and how do I make that clear? My job number one as an animator is to communicate clearly. If nothing else, that's what you have to do. You can animate in sort of any style. It can be like you know, intentionally grotesque. It can be like super simple. It can be like highly complex and realistic. But you can only really fail if you have failed to communicate what you intend. That's really the only thing that's like a no-no. Everything else is kind of up for grabs, and everything else is kind of a choice. Like, do I animate this in a certain sort of style, or am I going to keep it super simple and super limited? Those are basically all choices. But the thing you kind of can't, you know, miss is communicating what you intend to communicate to the audience. So today, as you can see, this squirrel is like super generic in terms of its design. It's just supposed to be there so I can animate something comfortably without thinking too much of design. So it's kind of super generic, and I'm going to animate it in a fairly generic Disney kind of style, where you know, this is more about seeing the approach rather than seeing the specific style that I'm working in. So to that end, I'm going to start by, and I'm working in TV Paint, by the way, and if any of you have worked in TV Paint, you'll know what I'm up to. But I'm going to turn on, let's see, I'm going to actually get rid of these boxes over here. Hello. Okay, so I'm going to turn on this. This is my light table so I can see what my previous drawings were, and hopefully you guys can all see this okay. So I'm going to start by actually doing kind of trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen. Now, a lot of times this might be sort of the thumbnail stage that you do. But I like sometimes to do like drawings which are not just that are kind of like thumbnails, but I'm actually planning out the drawings in actual animation space as I'm doing them. So what I'm going to do is I'm imagining just him kind of maybe jumping in for one step, comes to a halt, this acorn comes down, falls on his head, bounces over to here, and he's going to look at it. And then if we've got time, he might get super happy and grab it and run off. We'll see. Or he might get super mad and kick it. All right, we need a choice here. Directors, communal directors, my 200 and something directors out there, tell me whether he should get happy, grab it and run off, or whether he should get like angry and kick it. He should be incredibly first, kick it, angry. Okay, you happy guys were too slow. There were like 3 angry ones before anyone said happy. Oh, hangry. Oh, that's nice. Okay, we're going angry. We're definitely going angry. Okay, so we're going to go angry and kick it. Awesome. So I'm going to start by kind of doing drawings which I kind of know are going to have to be there. What you might sort of call tentpole drawings, sort of drawings which really kind of hold the scene up. Drawings that really I know drawings that I would sort of do if you were storyboarding it, right? So, and they're going to be pretty scribbly and pretty loose, and I might refine them a little bit later. But I think I'm going to do this drawing of him looking at the acorn on the ground. And although I'm getting way ahead of myself and should probably do that acorn on a separate level, but we'll figure it out. But his feet are going to be in the same place. And then I think putting his hand up on top of his, rubbing the top of his head, or just grabbing the top of his head that just got hit, right? So I'm going to spend a little bit of time getting this drawing, at least the elements of this drawing, where I think they should be, with the arm and the body and the, let's see, I think I'll just do the tail where it was, but I'm already thinking ahead about what I'm going to do with the tail as he gets hit. So it's not just going to stay there as a held cell. So I'm just trying to figure out the best pose for this arm and the other arm right there. So I'm just kind of like trying to think of like the best balance for this pose, right? And then his ears are going to be back here like that. Something like that, maybe. That arm's a tricky one, but we'll see. So definitely that. Now that I've got that sort of target, I'm going to think about how I'm going to get there. The thing I'm going to be doing a lot of tonight, and you'll see me do this, I'm thinking ahead. I'm kind of thinking ahead, like several stages to where I want to be. So that when I'm doing the thing that I'm doing, in this case, just doing simple poses, I'm already thinking of how they're going to relate to the other poses that he's doing and how they kind of fit into this pattern of the action. So I've got that one. I'm going to move that one a little bit later. I'm now going to see if I can do this sort of getting thumped on the head a little bit. So the drawings that are before are going to be in green. The drawings that come after are going to be in sort of red. So you can kind of see a little bit what I'm up to. So if I start with this one and an acorn is now going to kind of come straight onto his head, I'm going to do this just squash of his face getting hit with an acorn, right? So I'm just going to do the acorn like this, and then do his head getting hit with it. So this is really me just experimenting with, this is almost kind of like straight ahead at this point, where I'm just flipping these two drawings and trying to get the relationship right between the squash. And this is kind of where I'm just trying to feel it out a little bit. And I think I'll bring his elbows up as he gets hit on the head, with his hands coming up and his elbows getting a little bit wide. But his face kind of squashing in there as his eyes closed. And I'm probably going to adjust the acorn once I've kind of done this squashed head a little bit. And you know what? I don't think that's far enough. That's definitely not far enough. Okay, I'm going over here. This is the beauty of drawing stuff digitally these days, is that you can just do stuff like this. I don't have to redraw it on another piece of paper. So I'm just going to take his head and take it down there. And just keep working on it. Yeah, that's a bit better. I'm going to bring this acorn down further, though. Now, this kind of thing, like how far I'm supposed to go with a drawing like this, it's basically a lot of experience about like what I know kind of works. There's not much more I can tell you about it than that. It's like, yeah, that feels about the right amount of movement there, like how much he's moving. Because I'm already thinking this is going to be like a pretty sharp little poke on top of his head, and he will recover after this before he looks at the acorn on the ground. So I'll probably squash his legs out a little bit. Let's just do it right now. Let's actually get there. I'm going to put a little bit of squash and stretch on the bottom half of his body, a little bit of squash. So his whole body is going to like get a little squished when this happens. And his cheeks get bulged out a little bit. And his ears get flopped down. I guess it's kind of like a red squirrel that has like tufty ears. And his tail, and that's the tail, and any sort of bit of follow through that I do, any sort of thing that's loose or floppy, I'm kind of going to have to take my best guess at where it is. This is an interesting little part of the drawing where I've got his shoulder and his cheek kind of coming up and meeting each other. And how do I want to do that so I can feel the squish of one against the other? Often doing little bits of animation like this or doing it, this kind of physical stuff, is finding those parts that kind of show you the change of shape that's happening. So in this part, it's about the squishiness of his shoulder against his cheek and how I'm going to do that. So I could actually go to town a little bit more and have his cheek sort of overlap his shoulder, get his shoulder to go even higher maybe. Yeah, let's go even higher. So you can see me just kind of like exploring how to do that. And while I'm doing this, I'm sort of looking for opportunities. I'm looking for opportunities to give those changes of shape and those forms, you know, squashing and stretching, that is going to communicate what's happening to him as he gets hit. So that's one little opportunity I found, like his cheek against his shoulder, that I can use. His tail, I think I might leave it for a second. I could take my best guess as to where it's probably going to be, but I want it to probably do like a little flick, little follow through flick when he gets hit. So my best guess would be to kind of like stick it out. Something like that. But again, this is my best guess for the tail right now, to where that's going to actually end up being. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I don't like it. I don't like that at all. I think I'm gonna, yeah, take it more like that, I think. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so now I've got this like drawing up to here, and I've got my getting hit on the head. I guess if we have time, I could go back and do like this little step up into this last position. But you know what? I'm going to actually forge ahead, and if I have time, I'll go back and do it. But if we don't, then we don't. So I'm going to do now what's going to happen, and I'm not really exactly yet, but very soon I'm going to be putting these frames actually in the right timing where they really need to be. But I'm not really doing that yet. I'm just sort of putting them randomly one after the other, and fairly soon I will be putting them in the right place. So he's going to get hit on the head, and then I'm going to have him go into this sort of little bit of surprise, like, oh my gosh, I got hit on the head. So I'm actually going to almost flip it with that first one and kind of stretch him out a little bit. Oh my gosh, I got hit on the head, and now I'm kind of getting up into a bit more of a surprise kind of thing, with his ears sticking up in the air and like these wide open eyes. Now, depending on the kind of animation that you're doing, there could be moments in sort of here where you want to act stuff out, or you want to like try stuff. I am forging ahead very, very quickly in a way that I would say earlier in my career I would not have dared to do. So I wouldn't expect yourselves, if you're just starting out in animation, to forge ahead this quickly, because it really is a little bit of a misrepresentation of like how much thinking is sometimes required to do something like this. So let's see, boom, boom, and I'm going to stretch his face out a little bit. So yeah, there's like definitely sort of moments where you would want to either do thumbnail drawings or act stuff out, possibly yourself, when trying to conceive of the action of a shot. If you're trying to figure out exactly what the shot's going to entail, there's usually a lot more thinking and planning than you're seeing me do. Although I am doing quite a bit in my head right now. So I'm actually just seeing if I can get this drawing to feel like I want it to feel, trying to get this pose, and you see me kind of like noodling it and like figuring out like, oh my gosh, I don't like that, I don't like this. How about just like that would be better, maybe like that. So again, I'm gonna like stretch it out more. This is not a great drawing. It's the sort of thing that I would like, oh yeah, I would go back to this and redraw it like 100 times before I was actually happy with it as a drawing, especially in the sort of tie down phase where I would like actually make it a really nice, appealing drawing. Right now it's a bit of a placeholder. Bit of like, oh yeah, well this is kind of, I know what I feel like I want to do. The elements aren't quite in the right place, but you know. But I have a feeling of what I want to try and do. Okay, so I'm gonna put his arms down, stretch him out a little bit. I wonder if I've gone far enough. Maybe not. I'm gonna take this again and actually shrink it a tiny bit and get it up there a little bit more, up to maybe about here. Yeah, maybe something like that would be better. Squish, and you get up to this kind of swish. And now I'm also thinking ahead a little bit like, oh, I'm looking for drawing opportunities, like ways to make this interesting graphically. Again, I'm going to take my best guess at the tail. I'm just going to like, I don't know, it'll be somewhere. Not exactly sure where. The follow through element, you know, for me is best done not completely after the fact, but because I want to think about its design. I want to make sure that it fits in with the design of the character, but I'm looking for opportunities to, like the straight of his back as it goes down into his hip, I'm looking for those opportunities to strengthen the drawing in some sort of gestural way, which means something, to kind of get this like, oh, he's like a pyramid here with a, you know, with a ball on top. You know, so I'm looking to lean into those kinds of ideas when I'm doing these drawings. But it's the action that comes first, and then I look for the opportunity to put those in if an opportunity sort of presents itself. Basically, is what I'm doing. Okay, so now I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4 poses. I'm going to work on this one a little bit more. I'm going to do him with an angry expression on right here. I'm not entirely convinced exactly when that expression is going to come on yet. But I'm thinking about it. I'm doing it for now. It's a bit of a placeholder because I'm thinking ahead and feeling that I want to be able to have the audience see that change of expression happen. I don't want that change of expression to happen while they're moving a lot. I want you to see that thought occur to them. Let me actually shift that a little bit so it's actually, you know what, I'm going to do, I quite like the way that was drawn actually, so I'm going to put it back. But to make it a little bit more consistent with that first drawing, I'm just going to shift it back over here. Okay. Just trying to stay kind of consistent with the model. Yeah, and then this one I can really kind of like squash stuff down, get these down like that. Cool. So now it's a question of me kind of like moving between these things in an interesting manner. Oh, in a logical and interesting manner, really. So I'm kind of working pose to pose, as you've seen, like doing these major poses, constantly thinking while I'm doing them about what's going to go in between. It's a little bit like doing a jigsaw puzzle where you're putting in a piece in the middle of the table and you're trying to get it kind of in the right place where you think it's going to end up being. You know where you kind of want it because you can see the jigsaw, but you're kind of taking your best guess at where it is. But you know it's going to end up with a lot of neighbors around it, you know, but you're gonna try and put it in the right place. And that's what I'm doing with these keys. I know that these keys are going to have a lot of neighbors, drawings that come up to them and drawings that lead away from them. So I'm trying to put them in the right spot in terms of where all the elements of the drawing, the arms, the legs, the head, where all those are, because I'm thinking about the other pieces of the jigsaw. I'm already thinking about them. While I'm doing those drawings, I'm thinking about where they fit into this action. So doing that, I'm actually going to have this acorn come down and hit him on the head. I'm just going to kind of repeat his drawing in a cheaty way. You know, this is like something I would only do. Oh, you know, didn't mean to do that. But I am going to clear that away. So we got this first drawing of him. I'm just going to hold it for, you know, 12 frames or so. Then this acorn comes in, and then let's see, if I was doing this sort of on ones, I would expect that acorn to take about 3 frames or so to hit him on the head. So I'm actually going to do a drawing right now where the acorn is basically, oh yeah, sorry, I'm on the wrong tool. Okay, back to the pencil. Where the acorn is kind of making contact with his head, but nothing's really happened yet. Because nothing really happens until it hits him. So I'm going to actually have it here. And I think I'm going to do one drawing in between these two for it falling. But it'll be on ones, this little part. In other words, when I say on ones, it's going to be using every frame. Okay, so got nothing, 1, 2, 3. So this is just kind of an in-between, like that, of it falling down, falling at a pretty steady rate. And then we want to get to here. So here I'm going to, again, pop straight to another frame, very next frame. This is falling like this. So I'm going to give this a little bit of a cushion, but not much. It's going to come down and whack him on the head. So I'm going to have this one on for 2 frames, and then this next one will be on for 2 frames as well. That, so this is still coming down. This is 1 frame later. So I'm favoring the bottom drawing here. So I'm going to basically pop him straight to, you know, an in-between where I'm favoring the bottom. And he'll just cushion in just ever so slightly at the bottom there. Eyes will already be closed, I think, at this point. Doom, 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 smoosh. You know, I need to move that down a little bit. Get that about here, I think. So you can see me kind of like looking at the surrounding drawings and fitting these things into their proper place. Right now, this drawing is kind of doing itself. I'm not really doing this drawing. It's kind of doing it by like, oh, these things have to be where they are. So I'm just putting these lines where they kind of have to be. I'm going to change this up a little bit so that everything is not all happening or all changing direction at the same time to give it more of an organic flavor. So although for his head, I'm really favoring this down position, in other words, getting the spacing of it, favoring that down position. The arms, I'm going to actually have only just starting to come up. So his arms and his body really, the sort of impact hasn't sort of ricocheted all the way through him yet. So his body is actually favoring the initial key, the up position. So I'm actually drawing these hands very close to the other ones because I'm already thinking ahead about what I want to do with them next. I have a notion of what I want to do. Like that. And then again, the tail, I'm going to start it out really close to this initial one and have it kind of pop to that one on that frame like that. So we get to see kind of the impact there. And now we've got to get ourselves to this. I don't know what's going to happen with this acorn, and I kind of don't care yet. I just know it's going to bounce off his head and come back there. But what I want to do, I think, is have him, after this, recoil a little bit. So as I'm going through this, I'm thinking about the timing. I'm going to get these things out here. I'm going to recoil him for about maybe just 4 frames. And then he'll pop up into this sort of surprise thing, I think. Or maybe he'll just spend, yeah, maybe 4 frames is good. So I'll go 4 frames later. I'm going to do a drawing where this acorn has bounced up. And where does it end up? Let's see, it ends up over here. So now this is bouncing ball territory where I need to actually, maybe I'll have it bounce and then come back a little bit. So I'm actually going to have it land a little further away than where it was. So I'm going to have it bounce up to here. So this is where I'm actually thinking about its parabola through the air, because it's now a projectile, it's now a bouncing ball. So I'm going to just draw it right there, I think. But I'm imagining where those others are. When I drew that, I'm thinking this. That's why I drew it there, because I was imagining where those are. But his body, I'm actually going to just very slightly move, but kind of keep him in the same spot, almost. It's like a little bit of a ricochet, a little bit of a recoil in here. Just a little moment of like, oh my gosh, I just got hit on the head. But he hasn't really reacted to it yet. But I can get a little bit more okay, I'm thinking about this. I'm actually going to do quite a little bit of overlappy type stuff, I think, in here, or a little bit of like organic sort of nuance in here with the way that his arms are going to be moving. So I want this sort of flat top to his head for sure, right? You can just see him coming up just a smidge. in terms of his head. But I'm imagining his arms actually coming up higher, but then just start to come, ooh, I don't know where they're going to be. Thinking about where they are going to be, but I think I'm going to take my best guess and think about here somewhere. But I might shoot them up even further on the in-between. Yeah, I might do that. This is 4 frames later. This tail is probably going to be down here somewhere. I have no idea yet. I'm going to wait till I get that in between in there before I do that tail. Okay. Okay, so let's actually do that one right now. We were thinking about the acorn being up here somewhere, like the bouncing ball. Hopefully some of you had a chance to do a bouncing ball at some point. I'm going to, again, favor this one. If I was drawing a chart for this, this would be, what frame am I on? This is 18. This would be 18, 20, 22, like that. So I'm favoring this one, which is 22. If I was actually working it out, because like I say, I'm going a little bit too quick. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to try, well, it might come out too fuzzy or mealy or soft, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to have his hands come up the highest on this one, because what I want to have him happen next is these hands are going to punch straight down into here. So there's this nice sort of organic overlap as he comes into this thing. So his hands are going to go lower and then come up as the rest of him comes up. So I'm already thinking about how these sort of different elements of him kind of overlap each other a little bit. And I'm trying to build it into this drawing as I do it. Again, this is the sort of thing like when I was younger, I would have to take several stabs at doing. I'd work it out, the main action first, and then I would think about, oh, how am I going to make some sort of overlap happen or something to make it a little more organic, right? But I've been doing this for a long time, so I can actually think about that stuff from the get-go these days. I guess what I'm saying is, like, don't be freaked out if it looks like I'm just making it up on the spot, which I am, but like, that's an experience thing right there. So I'm gonna actually do this tail. So this tail is kind of like straight ahead a little bit more now. So there, I'm going to follow this kind of acceleration I see in the top of the tail. So I can see it go a little bit of space, bigger space. So I would expect the top of it to be about here. So I'm just kind of following where it's going to. But the bottom end of it, I already want it to start flicking back. This is not a huge flick of the tail. It's not a massive sort of really big thing. I just want it to be a little bit of a flick. So the bottom edge of the tail is already kind of coming back like that. And then we're eventually working back up to, yeah, we actually don't know where we're going to be, do we? You know what? I think I'm going to take a guess at where this is. And all I'm going to do is keep it clear of the silhouette of his face. I'm just going to do that as a target for where I want to shoot to. Okay. Kind of had to wait till I kind of started it before I could figure out where it's going to end up. Now what I want to do is kind of like start to follow this curve that's working its way through the tail. You see this curve right here that's starting at the bottom of the tail? I want to work it through to the end of the tail until it comes up to the top here, until it comes up to this tail, like that. So I'm going to have it be here. So it's kind of the bottom of the tail is kind of doing its thing first. And the top of the tail follows through after. So this is kind of like the trick to doing follow through like this, is realizing that the curve kind of works its way through the thing. There. And now he's going to pop up straight into this thing. Now, this is where I have to think about a little bit of timing. So if I think about this going pop, and then he does this, oh my gosh, react. So the acorn is going to go. So this is where you kind of have to like think about, well, how long does that take for an acorn to go pop, hit the ground? Like how many frames is that? You know, it's about 14, but it's like the difference between like 1, 2. I know it's sort of roughly 12 to 14, just because I know that a march pace, a good brisk march, is like every 12 frames, 2 per second. So like is like a click every 12 frames or so. So I know it's like it's a little bit about 14 frames, something like that. So I've already got 6 frames on him here. So I'm going to do, because he's pretty little. I mean, this isn't like a big thing. If this was a person and they were 6 feet tall, this ball would probably take a little bit longer to do that. But it's tiny. So this is happening a little faster. So I know that, if I've got like 1 here and this is on 2, so 2 frames there, 2 frames there, I know I'm going to have like that going there. So I'm trying to figure out exactly where I want to put this key drawing. When I was younger, I would like at this point be shooting like pencil tests and stuff and sort of playing with the timing. You'll notice tonight I'm being very reckless, and I'm never going to press play until we get to 10 o'clock, which is kind of scary and ridiculous. But it's also a good thing to try and do every now and then. I don't do it when I'm working in production. I actually like check my work as I'm doing it. But it can be a good exercise, even if it's a little scary. It's a little bit like throwing your training wheels away, where you go, like, I'm just going to try animating something from start to finish and never press play until it's done. And then see what you thought was right, see what you thought was wrong, until you can get to a point where you can predict what it's going to look like before you press play. You're kind of animating a little bit more like trial and error, right? Which takes longer and it's not as efficient, and you don't get to the point. The sooner you can kind of get into that phase where you can at least kind of take a guess of what you think it might look like before you press play, that's a huge leap to be able to take. And it takes a while. It takes you having to animate quite a few minutes of stuff before you get that feeling of like, yeah, I'm pretty confident how this is going to look before I press that button. But if you can get to that phase, it makes you a super efficient animator, because you're not animating by trial and error. So I'm going to actually right now think about where I want this drawing. I think I just want it around 12 frames, maybe even less. Boink. Yeah. Thinking about 10 frames maybe. He's pretty little. And I don't want this to be too draggy. Yeah, I'm just going to put it there for now and see how we go. All right, and now I'm just going to, that's my target. I'm working up to this target, and now I'm just going to work up to it. So I am going to kind of go a little bit straight ahead, but I really just want to kind of pop him straight up there. I could overshoot this, but I don't think I'm gonna. I could do a thing where he goes up and even a little bit further than this and settles back into it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to just cram these drawings up pretty close up in here. So straight from this one, boom, straight into a pretty aggressive space in here. But I'm going to do another thing where I'm going to keep his mouth closed. And I'm actually going to think maybe just do a smidge open on his eyes. Because I actually want to save the major squash and stretch of his face opening up until you can kind of see it happen. The more I can get it sort of slightly closer in screen space, where he's occupying the same part of the screen, the audience will then actually see that change come over the face. You don't have to do it every time. It's just a thing that you can play with a little bit. Like, there's multiple ways to kind of time and to play with things like this. So like I said, his hands have already started down, so that gives me like the kind of almost the permission to get them really far down on the very next frame. And I'm going to go even further on the next one before they come back. So hands all the way down to here. And then I'm really kind of working into this last drawing. So basically I'm thinking about slowing into this drawing. That's really what's happening here. But I'm trying to be fairly aggressive about it. Not too much. I'm going to just overshoot that curve a little bit. See this curve start to come in here? It has to work its way out to the end there. But every point on this tail has its own way of changing direction. So I'm very carefully putting that where it really should be to make this flow. This right here, that's critical to making something flow, what I'm doing there. Basically, if I draw it a little harder, like I'm looking at this spacing as it goes, it's traveling quite a lot. I can't just then have it go this way. It's got to kind of like arc around a little bit, that part of the curve. What did I do? Did I just, yeah, I just completely erased that drawing. Yeah, so I'm cutting it in further. And then this end of his tail has kind of come out and around. You know, let's actually do that better. While we're here, let's actually do this properly. Looking at the end of his tail, it coming up and around and out. This is not long enough. This needs to go out more because it's going out in a little circle. And now it's kind of coming around in this sort of little circle like that. So now it's going out to here, maybe about there. This is the kind of thing that makes it really elegant and not clunky. And although I'm doing this rough and scribbly, I am paying attention to that stuff even at this stage. And again, we were kind of going in a circle, so this is going to be here. Now, this is really kind of where the drawings start to do themselves. I'm literally kind of putting these curves where they should be because of the action. You know. Now I'm going to, again, aggressively favor. They're on twos here, so I do have a glass of water handy somewhere. Even though I'm not going to overshoot his face, I am going to, I think, expand the expression a little bit more. So this expression I'm doing here is going to basically match the last one. having him stretched out pretty much all the way. You know, I think I need to get a little closer. I think I just need to get a smidge closer. Yeah, something like that. But I am going to, I think, at least with the expression, overshoot with the expression a little bit. In other words, I'm going to open up his eyes and his mouth and the stretch on his face a little bit more than it actually ends up being on the final key, on the thing I'm aiming at. So he will kind of, and like I said, I'm actually going to get these hands to go even lower, more stretched out on this one, like that, and then they're going to be recoiling into the final position. There. Heavy favor on the bottom of his body, roughing that in very quickly, just kind of like what I need for a rough test. Often I'll just kind of like rough something in like enough for a rough test, but I won't be like super, you know, clean about it. And again, I'm going to, at least on where his nose is and his skull, basically, I'm going to be super favoring this last one. But as far as like the expression on his face, I'm going to overshoot a little bit. So I'm actually going to crank his eyebrows even higher than they are, and the top of his eyes, just stretching out his eyeball even more, and the mouth even more than it is on the final one. So you can see I'm kind of like playing with how, you know, ways to make this sort of organic as well as just moving from pose to pose. I am not just moving from pose to pose, I'm kind of moving through them and finding interesting things to do along the way to keep it organic and flexible, so it doesn't look mechanical. So it looks lively and it's organic. The arms I can now just start in-betweening, basically. The rest of the body I can just start in-betweening. I think pretty much all of this I can just start in-betweening into this final position. As we get there. And then sort of one more, I think. I think I might leave that for now and come back to it if I have time. I would like to, you know, craft one more drawing in there in between these two, but I'm not going to do it just now. So let's have a look at our acorn while this was happening. We need to get it down onto the ground, right? So we had there, and then I was, like I was thinking of before, going to sort of here as it starts to fall. And then, you know, this parabola that is falling, then accelerating down that path here. And then I think the next one, it'll probably hit the ground. And then the next one, it'll be right down here as it accelerates and hits the ground. Boom, like that. It's rotating through the air as it's doing it as well. So if I turn off these things, you can actually see what's happening now. Boink. What? Yeah, so you just go whap, and then, oh my God, I got hit. Now his kind of brain has to kind of take over. This has just been like quick reaction, kind of like, you know, stuff. It happens pretty fast. Now you kind of get to see his brain kind of go like, what just happened to me? Oh my God, there was an acorn that hit me on the head. And it's not too complicated, but what I want to be able to do is get from this pose to this pose, right? And how am I going to do that? I'm going to keep him up here a little bit while you see that thought thing happen to him. And I'm going to put this on a random frame right now until I figure out how I'm going to time it. And then you're going to see his arm start to come up. So let me think about how actually best to do that. I'm going to have him, I think, look at this thing that's on the ground, this acorn. First. And I think if I quickly have him look at it, and then he'll come forward. So he'll do a quick look, and then he'll come forward. So this drawing here, and I'm going to go to it fairly fast after that one. Again with the, oh my gosh, what's going on? Kind of thing. And I'm not sure exactly what to do with his arm yet, whether I'm going to actually have it start on its journey yet. I don't think so. But it's a thought, it's a possibility that I might be starting this elbow coming up into the air, ready to grab the top of his head. It's a possibility. A definite possibility. He's still more sort of in shock at this point. And he's still up here. I think I'll just continue this tail on its journey a little bit. There's a definite possibility that I'm going to start this elbow up there, but I haven't figured it out yet. So I'm going to kind of leave it out a little bit right now until I figured that out. But his hand is just going to keep coming up. And I'm trying to turn his head and failing dismally. Because I have no idea how this guy's put together. You know, I'm going to erase that for a second. You know what I'm going to do? I got a good idea. I'm going to take this first drawing and I'm going to copy it over to here. So I can actually now flip this one with the first one. So I'm going to kind of actually get a sense of like the consistency of his design and see how out of whack I'm getting. And I'm getting pretty out of whack, so I'm going to redraw this and make it more consistent and fit in with what I was intending at the beginning of this thing. So there to there to there to there. Something like a little bit more like that, maybe. Ugh, so ugly. This is why it's good for you to see someone like struggle with this kind of thing, right? Knowing that it doesn't all just come easy. Take some work. Yeah, I could work on that drawing for a while and it still wouldn't be right. Okay, So the fun stuff is coming in a second here, I think. But really, I'm gonna, after this drawings on for twos, I'm gonna have him, let's see, let's drag these out a little bit more. And then right away after this one, when he turns his head, it's going to be pretty quick. So there's almost going to be no real slow into it. It'll just be, I think I'll just go straight into it without any kind of real slowing. But I think I might close his eyes along the way. Do a little blink as he's changing his eye direction here. That was on for 4 frames. You know what? I apologize. I'm going to go right back into it and actually do this one right now. My brain can't handle it not being there. So I'm actually going to do this one really quick, really scribbly, just to get it in there. So can you guys still like see and hear everything I'm doing okay?
Yeah, it's all good.
You know, because I'm basically just sitting in my living room, kind of like talking to nothing right now. And I just hope that you guys are all there.
Yep, all is well.
Okay, good.
Everyone is here and everyone is enjoying.
Okay, good. Yay. Cool. And what time is it? It's 8:07. Hey, we're doing all right. We might actually get to some fun stuff here. And I was going to like just favor that one in there. Quickly rough these in. That. By the way, I do have thoughts running through my head about how he's going to kick this thing later. I'm just not telling you yet. I haven't like not thought about it. Okay, so now he goes up to here for like 6 frames, which is kind of almost the shortest time you can have on an expression, like 6 frames or so for you to actually be able to see it. You know, I really, really hate this drawing. I hate it with a passion. Yeah, I really don't like it. I'm actually going to clear that one away completely and do something more like that initial drawing, I think. In terms of the head angle. Getting both eyes in there. Getting that ear down here. Behave. Behave, you nasty squirrel. Let's see. So there. Yeah, getting there, maybe. Yeah, maybe getting there a little bit better. Not great. And yeah, I think I'm going to just start to get this elbow going. As far as him reaching up to the top of his head. But that'll come in a second. First, I'm going to do that thing I said where I was going to close his eyes and get over there. So here, 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 here. So I'm almost just really kind of in between this into this new spot, but I'm starting off with a bang. I'm kind of like not really slowing out of this pose. I'm going bang kind of straight into the head turn with no sort of slow in. I'm just kind of crashing straight into it. Give it a bit more sort of punch. I'm going to leave this arm off for a second because that's actually going to time itself a little bit differently. Everything else is kind of slowing into this, but that arm is not going to do that. That arm's going to be weird. This is good. This is going to be very scribbly and it'll probably boil all over the place, but that's okay. Okay, where were we? Here, here, here. Go to there. While I do this, it would be good if maybe Keely, you could ask me one of the questions that's in the chat.
Sure. So Ashley Sanchez asks, what age did you first enter the animation industry?
I was 20, I believe. Yeah. I think I just turned 20. Yeah. 1987.
Well, thank you. Marina Avalos also asks, hello, I wanted to preface by saying I'm a huge fan of your work, Mr. Baxter. That being said, I was wondering if you have ever struggled with the feeling of burnout with your work. Do you have any advice on how to overcome that feeling or what you do when you experience it?
I mean, I've certainly felt like I've sort of gone through phases where I felt like I sort of wasn't learning anything or I was sort of feeling a bit stagnant. And mostly for me, it's about sort of like making sure I get like artistic input happening, that I'm not just expecting myself to be able to produce art out of nothing, so that I don't expect myself to be able to like just create something out of a void all the time. You can do that quite a bit, but eventually you kind of like run out of juice. You just run out of inspiration. So at times like that, I concentrate on my artistic input, whether it's like watching a movie or you know, doing the things that you like to do that inspire you artistically. You know, I like to watch ballet. You know, I find that really interesting to watch. I even like to watch like sports sometimes just as a kinetic exercise, just because I like to watch people move around. I don't really care who wins. It's just more like, oh, I find that fascinating, and those sorts of things actually do kind of inspire me to want to, or do kind of make me feel more creative again, is getting input, whether it's just going out and being in the world for a while. But expecting yourself to be able to just constantly do output with no, you know, input is it's expecting too much of yourself, really.
Yeah, that's great advice. Alejandra Salazar asks, who did you animate in Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh, I started out doing like shots of like the weasels. I started, the first shots I ever gave to animate were like some shots of like those weasels, and the very first shots I did were like hands turning ignition keys and feet pressing on pedals, you know, in the car or the, I think it was the big dip machine. Those were the first shots I ever animated professionally with those. And then after that, I got like a couple of weasel shots to do. Andreas Dejar was nice enough to give me like a big dialogue shot of a weasel to do, because he was really under the gun trying to finish this one shot of Roger in the sink and the weasel interrogating him. And there's a really big long shot, and he was doing Roger, and he said, "Can you? Yeah, I'm going to give you the weasel to do." Because he'd actually I was assisting him at the time, so he'd actually been giving me little bits of animation to do in those shots, like just the weasel's watch chain swinging around. Like he would animate the weasel, and I would animate the watch chain that dangled off his waistcoat, you know, stuff like that. So he gave me a big long dialogue shot to do once. And then after that, I was kind of a little bit off on my own. And by the end of it, I started getting a few Jessica shots to do, some Roger shots to do, more sort of towards the climax of the movie.
That's awesome. Michael Garcia asks, how do you achieve that kind of understanding of drawing characters in space? I think he meant when you had started drawing the squirrel, and like being able to understand the character's design enough to draw them in any angle.
Well, as you can see, I am struggling. having not had a proper model sheet of this squirrel, or actually drawing it a lot. Yeah, I'm definitely struggling. But yeah, I do like to do things like do turnarounds and stuff on characters that I'm trying to get used to. You know, when I'm trying to figure out a character, I will actually just take a drawing and turn it around. I do a little thing. Maybe I'll go off. Do we have time? Yeah, I think we have time. I'm going to go off on a little tangent right now and show you some of the exercises that I do for that occasionally. I'm actually going to go to the end here and show you kind of what I do a little bit. So often when I'm like trying to get to do a new character, I will spend a lot of time doing like a really good front view, or what I think is a good front view, you know, of that character. And I will spend my time and try and like make that right. I don't know what I'm drawing. I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is a squirrel or a cat. I think it's probably maybe it's a squirrel. So I will work on that front view like properly for a while and make sure it's kind of like what I want. And I will do it sort of in concert with, let's see, where am I? Sorry, my TV Paint is blocking, or like the other windows are blocking where I'm trying to get to. Okay, so I will do it in concert with, with doing a really good profile, right? So if I work on the front view, you know, like this, and I'll have the mouth like that, and make sure that I've got the muzzle sort of in the right place, and that where the eyebrows are, where the ears are. I will do that sort of in concert with doing like what I think is a profile that really fits that. So I make sure that all these features kind of line up with each other, that they are actually dimensional. If you're animating in this sort of dimensional style, right? Now, this is sort of a part where you can start to make those decisions about, well, is this a super graphic kind of style where things actually don't always match each other? You know, if they look from the front, you know, there's like graphic cheats, or is it actually something you could sculpt if you wanted to, right? All depends on the style of the piece. But if you're doing something that you feel like you want to be able to sculpt, it sort of exists as a three-dimensional thing, then I would actually work on this a little bit. And then I would spend some time and do a nice 3/4 between those two. Now, in doing a 3/4, you kind of have to remember that it's not just going to be an in-between, between here and here. That things like the nose, if this is 3/4 in space, the nose is actually going to be more pushed out to the edge than that. The eye is going to be almost in the middle, but not quite. And this is because, like, if you imagine looking down on it, if you're looking down on this squirrel from above and his nose is poking out the front, and then, or rather, I'll do it on this, the proper drawing. His nose is poking out the front, and then his nose, if you're just looking down on it from the top, his nose is poking out the side. And then the one in the middle, the 3/4 view, his nose is, at least in space, is actually exactly halfway between those two things, like the hands on a clock, right? If they're in space, if it was actually completely halfway through as his head turns around. If you look at that from the front, if you're looking at it from here, his nose is here, here, and here, right? If you're looking at it from this angle, it's favoring the outside. So I'm constantly thinking about how to turn things around, imagining them as like a big pizza, you know, with slices, and how those things, how those spaces manifest themselves as they go out and around, right? So that's kind of what I'm thinking about in terms of how to turn things around in dimensional space quite a bit. So the center line down his face is going to do this thing right here, this thing right here. But his eyeball, that eyeball is going to go out a little bit first before it goes back behind his head and lines up with the one in front of it in the profile. So constructing a really good 3/4 view is about figuring out where these things should be and also sort of playing around with them so they look nice. A little bit of both. Hopefully, if you have drawn them where they should look nice. But again, his ears are not going to favor this side. His ear point is actually going to favor this way because it's going it's going around the back. So I would do stuff like that, basically, when I'm like trying to figure out how a character is constructed in space. The other thing I would do is, in order to create really sort of nice up angles on things where I want to know how to draw a character sort of really looking up like that, or I want to know how to draw the character sort of really looking down on them, you know, how do I get that sort of structure into my head? And I'll do sort of funny cheats and stuff like that too sometimes. You know, I'll take a drawing like this. I will grab it. I will, let's see if I'm doing an up angle. I will actually take that profile and turn it like that. So take that profile and turn it up like it would be. And then I will go back to the front view. And now I can sort of flip between this tilted head, this tilted profile, and the front view. And between those two, I can actually kind of like reference where these different features might actually be. So in the front view, the nose is right dead center, but from the side, it's there. So if I draw the nose there, where they kind of like cross over each other, you know, going from the side and going from the front. His eyeballs are, top of his eyeball lines up here, but from the front, it's there. So his eyeballs start to like that. And the other one, kind of the same way. I can see the top of his eyebrows right there. Right there. I can see his mouth, or the center of his mouth here, but the corners of his mouth lower down. So I'm kind of using a bit like a technical drawing trick to at least kind of get myself in the ballpark of what, and his ears are now actually down here somewhere. So it's a way of kind of like cross-referencing the drawing and like creating an actual upshot on a character. And then I will go through and I'll actually turn the character around completely in that upshot. So I'll eventually, after I've done with the process, I'll get cool angles on the drawing where I can like, I'll start to understand what the structure of that character is and get it into my head. So I'm more confident about how it turns out. I can now more accurately visualize its structure in three-dimensional space. And then when I'm animating it, I can refer to drawings like this, but I can also, when I'm animating, keep thinking about that. Oh, things go out and around when they turn, constantly favoring those sort of outside elements as they go out and around like that. That's a little tangent.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you.
If I may interject, I have a follow-up question to that. Is this similar to, or did you do something similar like this in preparation for that 3D camera move at the, you know, the dining sequence for Beauty and the Beast? Because I know that's like a huge shift in perspective and just the whole characters. It's crazy, and I'm really curious to know how you prepared to do that.
Well, I did have you know, fairly good model sheets, I guess, on Belle and the Beast at that point already. So I didn't do that kind of thing exactly on that. It was more about doing a lot of cross-referencing between the computer photostats that I was getting and trying to fit those characters into the three-dimensional space. It was a lot of flipping, a lot of like planning, deciding on like where they're going to be at certain points in the dance, you know. Let's see, what am I doing here? I want to try and get his head. I'm trying to make some choices about, I think I'm going to put his hand on his head. And then kind of move into this thing, but I'm trying to figure out if I need to do I think I'm going to do the angry expression change up here. I think I'm going to do that. So you know what? I'm also going to do a little cheaty thing right now to get myself a little bit more consistent. I'm going to kind of shift and trace these a little bit. I kind of put his eyeball where I want it. I'm literally going to take these two drawings and kind of line them up on his eyeball. So I can actually do this character a little bit more in consistently, right? This just, you know, cheating the hell out of it. At least for his face. Okay. But you know what? I'm going to change where that is. I'm going to have that come down here. I want to kind of have him kind of arc under as he's doing this right now. So I'm kind of having him come down and then forward, but as he's coming down, I think I already want that arm almost on top of his head. Let's see. We're going to get, yeah, we're going to get fairly close with the elbow probably up in here, but we're going to get his hand outstretched, fingers stretched wide. This is my best guess of where this arm is going to be right now. something like that. And I'm gonna get this sort of elbow high, sort of almost sort of in sympathy, I guess, with the other one. There's a few drawings going to go in between these two. I'm not sure exactly how many, but quite a few. Let's see, I want to get to here, so I'm actually going to have his tail do another very gentle kind of wave as he does this transition. Okay, so we've got, there's, whoa, what? Like that. Hand here, probably hand here, somewhere. How do I want to do this? Trying to get his hands to be in an interesting place. I kind of almost feel like I need to do this straight ahead on his arm to get this looking nice. So I'm actually going to forge ahead and do this one as it arm accelerates here. His head is still super in the same place. Okay, ask me another question.
Okay, this one's actually related to what you're doing, like with the arm and with the tail, and it comes from Vivian.
The question is, what the hell are you doing with the arm?
Yeah, it is. Is there a reason you do the follow through and overlapping elements on the same layer and don't put things like the arms and tail on a different layer?
No, there's no real reason. It's just that I guess having worked on paper for so many years, I'm used to not being able to split things up into separate layers very easily. So it's a habit more than anything. I think I find it sometimes easier to keep the character coherent and consistent and looking like it's not made out of separate pieces if I am animating them on a single sheet or a single layer. But like I said at the beginning, a lot of this kind of like stuff is only possible with a pretty high degree of practice and experience, so that I kind of have a pretty good idea of where things are going to be. Let's see, one between there and there, and one between there and there. So yeah, so there's no real reason why I don't do that stuff on separate layers. But I'm able to think ahead quite a bit.
Okay. Makes sense. And similarly, Michael Garcia asks, or in the same vein, I guess, do you prefer animating on pencil and paper, or is digital your new preference?
I like them both, actually. I like the act of animating on paper because it gives me, it's more tactile. You can really sort of feel that touch of the paper against the pencil, or the pencil against the paper, rather, which I really like. I'm used to drawing digitally now, but when I first started, it felt like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm signing the back of a credit card, or like I'm drawing on slippery plastic. It doesn't have that sort of nice touch. And you can kind of like, use little tricks or cover your screen with stuff, or get the right felty nib on which I do, on your stylus, but it's not quite the same. So I do like just the act of having something on paper, just for a tactile perspective. And I also like having it be something that exists in the real world when I'm done. Like when I'm done, I've got a nice stack of paper. which is really cool. You know, instead of like you know, it just existing as sort of ones and zeros, right, out in sort of the ether somewhere.
Yeah.
I like that aspect to it too. The things I like about digital are just the freedom you get to like adjust things, as you see I've been doing. I don't have to like redraw entire drawings when I want to adjust, or I don't have to like spend a lot of time, you know, erasing, or, you know, that stuff is so much easier. Resizing, erasing, nudging things around, so much easier to do digitally.
Yeah. Ashley Sanchez asks, where did you study?
I studied at the West Surrey College of Art and Design, which is southwest of London, in the UK. This is right after, this was like my only real sort of college that I ever did. So I quit college after a year. And that's kind of where I went for a year. And that was the only place in the UK at that time which just did animation as a major. You couldn't do animation anywhere else as a major. So that's why I went there.
Anonymous asks, if you don't mind sharing with us, what was the most difficult scene that you had to animate?
There's difficult for different reasons, right? So there's technically tricky, like the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast, or, you know, animating Giselle's wedding dress is technically tricky, just because if you've ever seen that movie Enchanted, she's got this crazy wedding dress with all these ruffles all over it. That's tricky, just on a technical level. From a performance level, doing something that's really honest and true and really from the heart and meaningful is hard. So like in How to Train Your Dragon 2, when Stoic meets Valka again for the first time, and she's kind of like hemming and hawing, trying to like explain herself, and doing that sort of acting where you're having to kind of try and do something honest. That can be tricky too, because it's requiring real sort of acting chops from you to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So those can be hard to do.
And there are a few people asking, do you have a favorite project you worked on and a favorite movie just to watch?
Lots of different ones. I did really enjoy working on Lion King quite a lot. I was animating Rafiki on that movie, and that was fun for me because he's basically, you know, he's basically just on his own. I animated almost all of him in that movie. You know, almost all of Rafiki I got to animate. So that was really fun. I hope I'm doing.
Yeah, it's awesome. There's a similar question, kind of, that was, what is your go-to animal to animate?
Yeah, I don't think I have a good. I really like animating dogs. I really do like animating dogs a lot. They're really fun to do, and I've kind of gotten into it lately. Although I've hardly ever got a chance to do them professionally. I think my only dogs I've ever animated professionally was very recently on Wolfwalkers. I did like 2 shots on Wolfwalker.
Oh, that's cool.
The movie that just came out. Yeah, so I did a couple of shots on that movie, just because I begged Tom to let me do them, frankly.
Wolfwalkers is great, I can see that. Anonymous asks, who is your biggest inspiration, and how have they affected you?
As an animator, I mean, I think I learned a lot from studying Milt Kahl's work. He's one of the Disney 9 Old Men. When I first got to Disney in the late 80s, oh, I'm missing an arm. Well, I'm missing 2 arms. Yeah, I spent a while down in sort of the what they called the morgue back then. It's now got the much nicer title of the Animation Research Library. Studying his work, actually getting a lot of his scenes out of the morgue and looking at them and trying to study them and seeing what I could get out of them. That was really instructive for me.
That's really cool. Mm-hmm.
His draftsmanship was so good, but it wasn't just that. It was like I was really intrigued about how he structured shots, like how he made it look very simple, but they're actually very sophisticated. So I would go through and like look at the drawings and like wonder which drawings he would do first. I mean, I wonder how he like started, on a shot like this, for example, and then it taught me a lot about, because I went through different phases of like trying to do stuff that was too separate, like you were saying, almost on separate levels. But for me, it was sort of using separate timing charts for things where I would have multiple timing charts controlling different parts of the body, and it was all getting very sort of wibbly wobbly and out of control. And studying his work, realizing that he really kept the major parts of the body, how that was, moving around, quite simple, but he was going in over the top and doing a lot of unique things with like heads and hands and mouths and stuff, which made it organic. These little sort of overlapping timing things that I'm doing, where not everything is just in betweening from one key to the next. There's parts of the drawing which are doing something different. Like this arm, right? Like everything else is slowing into this key, but just at the very end, this arm starts to go. It starts to do its thing, leading into the next bit. I learned that kind of stuff from him.
Yeah. It's cool to see how much just influence McCall has and just how that's sort of spread through animation and how we still use it.
Although, if I'm looking at like performance and acting and stuff like that, like Frank Thomas and stuff is actually more interesting for me to look at. I'm going to really get a bit more aggressive. Again, I'm going to do this trick where I'm just going to put the eyeball where I want it to be. And I'm going to shift and trace this thing. Or not shift and trace, but shift and in between. So I can get more consistent with it. And I can slap that hand down on the head kind of where it's supposed to be. More questions?
So there are many to get through. Samantha Camacho asks, out of the many things you have animated, does one animation reel or scene make you happy or proud that you did it?
Let's see. I really do. I got a kick out of doing Spirit, actually, on that movie, on the horse movie. So I kind of went into that film, where are we at? 8:45. Cool. I went into that film like with the idea that I wanted to learn more about how to do quadrupeds for real, right? And I kind of used that film as an opportunity to kind of do that. So that was actually really fun for me to, go through that. So I was quite proud of the work that actually everybody did on that movie. The whole crew really rose to the occasion, I thought, and did some great work on that film.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff. Leslie Segundo asks, how did you end up going into animation and what was it like going into the professional industry?
Like I said, I quit school after a year to go work on Roger Rabbit. I basically kind of took a chance because it was a very rare thing to happen in the UK at that time. It was for like a big movie, big Hollywood movie like that to be happening in the UK. So yeah, that's kind of where that started for me.
Cool. And if I could just ask, where did you end up going from there? Like, what was your next project?
Little Mermaid. After that, I came
Um,
to California after that, and I worked on Little Mermaid.
cool.
Yeah.
Did you do after Roger Rabbit? Did you end up doing most of your animation in America, or did you go around to different places?
I moved to the US after that. I did actually go back to the UK for a year in like 1991, I think, right after Beauty and the Beast. I went back to the UK for a year.
Cool.
I need to have this guy kick this thing. I'm going to start thinking about doing that pretty soon, or it's going to get too late. So I think I might do one more drawing on this slow, and I'm getting like too much into doing all these separate drawings, and I'm not thinking enough about just getting this whole scene mapped out so we can actually all see it. So I'm going to draw this here. Quick scribbles, quick scribbles. Okay, now if I have time, I'm going to go back and do a couple of those in-betweens to slow into this thing right there. But basically that needs to hold for a while. All right, so let's kick this thing. Or even, you know what, before we do that, bounce. I'm going to just bounce that up there. So up there. Wonder where I'm heading. I hope I'm going in the right direction. Let's see if we can actually get far enough to see it on this. Nope, can't get far enough to see it yet. I'm going to have to guess. Okay, so bounce up there and then down like there. I really do need to know where this is going to end up. So that final one there, maybe I'll just quickly just copy that over here for a second so I can see it. I need to know where I'm heading. Where are you? There you are. Okay, so now I can see where it's going to go. I can actually bounce, bounce. That come down like that. And then maybe bounce like one more time, just sort of up in the air, just like on that one point. And then this is like a really quick sort of bounce, right? It's almost like just holding up there like that, and then gonna start falling back down. Falling back down to here. We can get rid of this one. Okay, yeah, ask me another question.
Sure. Edgar Arleno asks, all us artists find it very relatable when we see someone at your level being self-critical of your work. How often do you feel like you're absolutely nailing it while you're working on something?
Nailed it. I don't know. To varying degrees. I mean, I'm usually like, there's sort of varying degrees of like, yeah, I think that's okay. And sometimes I think like, oh, that turned out really good. I'm happy with that one. I try not to ever leave anything that I'm not happy with. I just won't, I'll keep working on it until I feel like I can, I don't have to feel proud, but I do have to feel like I don't ever want to be embarrassed by a piece of work later.
Yeah. Michael Garcia asks, have you done a lot of life drawing when you were starting to learn animation, and do you still do a lot of life drawing now?
I very occasionally get to do life drawing now, very, very occasionally. But I did do quite a lot when I was starting out at art school. Like I said, I went to college for a year, but before that, I was actually in a different art school where I did for another year in what they called a foundation course at the time. So, I did spend quite a lot of time doing like life drawing for sure.
And this is a question from the YouTube chat. Hello, Mr. Baxter. What is, in your opinion, the best habit an animator should have?
The best habit. I don't know if you can call it best habit, but the best thing you can concentrate on is like I said at the beginning, learning how to communicate clearly with drawings, like learning how to pose characters so that when the audience looks at them, they understand what's going on, that they understand the feelings that's going through this character's head. So you're working on attitude, you're working on so things like the gestural drawings that you might get to do, where you're like doing these quick sketches of people and you're trying to find the pose that really means something, so it's not ambiguous when the audience is looking at your work. They can understand what it is that you're trying to say. That's the most important skill. So getting in the habit, if you can call it a habit, of trying to do that is probably the most important thing to do. So yeah. I'm going to try and kick this thing. So I'm actually going to have a little squirrel boy step forward, just a little step, and I'm going to draw like a big anticipation, right, of him like kicking it. So I want to get like a big, actually going to get a bit more aggressive than that. I'm going to actually get up on the toes, get him up higher, get this leg. This is where I can actually have a bit of fun and really kind of like, what's the best way to really kind of like get this up there. So I think something like this. And this is going to be a hard one to get the tail to work. And then really making sure that I'm still really looking down at this thing. And working on the dynamics of this kind of pose. But really trying to make sure I'm still mad about it. It's turning into a cat, but whatever. I'm going to go grab that first drawing again. Grab that. Take it all the way to the end. Copy it over here. Okay. Okay, so now it's there. I can just kind of see that first one again. All right. That'll help me. Trying to get that into position. You know what I'm actually going to even do? I'm going to take that one and bring it over here. Just for a minute and actually work on this drawing with this thing right here so I can kind of like be a bit more consistent. It's still going to look like a cat. Oh, well, guess there's no getting away from the cat. Yeah. All right. This is the sort of thing that I would say to myself, you know what, I will solve this when I tie it down. And I will work on that drawing till it looks right. But let's not worry about the tail right now. Let's just worry about that. So I'm going to do that drawing kind of like a target, kind of like I hope that fits into the thing. Then I'm going to do the next one. You know what, let's get that back where it was. And so that one, that thing is still exactly where it was. Now I'm going to do the kind of the end of the kick after he's gone through. So maybe put that foot down again. This stuff gets fun to do. So right now he's got his kind of butt turned towards us. So I might actually turn his, I don't know, should I? Should I turn his, no. I think I probably should keep that foot turned that way. So let's keep his little feet turned that way. Okay, give me another question.
Sure. This is from Cassandra Palomo on YouTube. And she says, I have seen your reel on YouTube that you also animated in 3D for How to Train Your Dragon. When did you pick up 3D animation, and how was that transition for you as a 2D animator primarily?
So I first started doing 3D or CG on Shrek 2. That was the first movie that I did that DreamWorks was working on, where I actually transitioned and did stuff in CG. It was not too hard to transition in terms of technically, just because I think because I'd had a lot of experience animating, I wasn't trying to learn how to animate at the same time as learning how to do the program. So it really was just a question of trying to learn how to do the program and just like knowing how to access the controls, you know, and that kind of thing, rather than actually learning how to animate, you know, at the same time. So I think that was probably an advantage. And I'm also the kind of animator that likes to plan things, even though you're watching me like totally wing this. I am sort of naturally quite a planner of things, and CG often takes that a lot of planning to pull it off well. It's hard to do CG very intuitively, or completely intuitively, where all you're doing is just sort of feeling your way through something. The demands of doing something a bit more technically, you know, with a computer, sort of demands that you think through how you set things up. Sometimes, you know, it's a bit unforgiving that way, or can be. So I was fairly well suited to being able to do that kind of thing already. I'm going to turn his head sort of away a little bit because his whole body is kind of getting turned. Away here. But yeah, Shrek 2 was where I first started doing CG. I like doing CG. I prefer doing hand-drawn. It's sort of my first love is doing hand-drawn. But there are things to be said about doing stuff in CG. You get to animate things in maybe a slightly different way than you wouldn't if you were doing them hand-drawn. Mostly the sort of layering and sort of detail and subtlety you can put into a piece of CG, where you have to approach things usually a little more directly, you know, with hand drawn. Yeah, that's something that can change a little bit. I'm going to cheat this one again just to save time. I'm going to put this right here, and I'm going to that, and I'm literally going to use the same drawing and be a bit of a cheat just to save some time. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to erase this head and put a new head on it. Maybe I'll do this too. Maybe I'll just take his arms and stuff and shift him over here a bit. Frankensteining this pose together. What else? More questions?
Yeah. This is another from YouTube that says, what do you think are the most educational exercises an aspiring animator can do to improve?
Well, certainly it's good to try and like sometimes sort of separate out the thing that you're trying to get better at. So you're not trying to do everything all at once. I found that if you're trying to improve, you know, a certain aspect of your animation, sometimes it can be good to sort of separate that certain skill out. So if you're trying to improve like your mechanics or something, you can just do it like with stickmen, right? Just doing walk cycles or falling over or running or stuff, or throwing a ball with more like stickmen rather than actually doing fancy design work or things where you have to worry about hair. And if you're just concentrating on spacing and stuff like that, if you just want to concentrate on getting good expressions or communicating with attitudes, then you can actually spend your time doing more sort of animatics and boarding, storyboarding and stuff to really work on those things. So you're not worrying so much about the exact relationships between the drawings, but you're trying to make sure that you are communicating properly with your drawings. You can do that too. So I would sort of suggest like trying to separate out the skills a little bit so that they are not all having to be thought of at once. Because, you know, animation takes like thinking about lots of different things at the same time. And it could be a little bit like, oh my gosh, a little bit daunting, you know, trying to think of all these things at once.
So for that storyboard exercise, in relation to this question, someone is asking, what are some methods for capturing raw emotions in a believable way? Because they were pointing out your work on Moses in Prince of Egypt. So would that be like a similar way to work on that?
Yeah, so that's the kind of animation which requires you to be the most like a live action actor that an animator ever really is required to be, where you're trying to do something that's fairly, not super realistic, but it's pretty honest in its, you know, in its portrayal, in its acting choices, right? So that's the kind of thing where you kind of have to dig deep and understand at least what it is that a real actor does, even if it's not something that you are doing with your own body. You're an animator, so you're actually, you're not doing it with your own body the same way that an actor does. but animators have to be able to sort of at least understand what it is that a real actor does, so that they can kind of go through that process in their heads. So in doing like a real honest piece of acting, you can either sort of get up and act it out, or you can just imagine the character doing it. But the thing you have to be able to do is to do a little bit of what that real actor stuff is, which is get yourself emotionally in the right place to feel out what the character might do, and then let your body, or the body that's in your imagination, let it happen to them, rather than sort of planning exactly what you're going to do. Like, oh, the character's proud, so I'm going to stick their chest out, like what I'm doing right now. Basically, I'm animating in a rather symbolic, simple, well, simplistic, but very forthright, caricatured way, where it's like I'm just communicating these ideas almost through symbolic gestures, like the character's angry, so his brows come down and he mushes his face like that. Real life isn't quite like that. So to do a piece of acting which is, really realistic, you have to think about, or rather you have to get your mind into a place where you can let those emotions just happen to the character. As long as your mind is in the right spot, you can kind of like, get myself in the right spot, and then just kind of let it happen to you rather than concentrating on what you're going to do. So getting yourself into that right moment and letting the emotion happen to you, and seeing what happens to your body, or seeing what happens to the imaginary body in your head. And that way you can get to some more honest acting choices that you might be required to do in a moment, like, Prince of Egypt or one of these things.
Do you personally ever shoot like a reference video, or do you just imagine it?
I occasionally do shoot reference, like that Valka thing I was telling you guys about, where she's with Stoic, and I did shoot myself doing that. It's rare. It's a pretty funny video because it's me holding a broom handle trying to be Valka. But it's rare, that I do that. I'm not against people doing it. I think it's a good idea to do, as long as you realize that your character, that live action actors are cast for their physicality as much as just their acting talent. Animators are not. You are not physically like the thing that you're animating. So that you have to be aware that any sort of physical things that you might do are going to be done through your body, and not necessarily, your character might do it slightly differently, because they're very different than you are physically. So if you reference of yourself, just be aware that, oh, this character might do this not like me exactly. And you can use the reference to get really good ideas, but to be aware that those ideas might need transposing into a different character's way of doing something. The way that they hold their elbows, or the way that they stand, or the way that they hold their bodies might be different than you are. In fact, they probably will be different than you are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you kind of need to be able to do that little bit of transposing, going through that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So this question from Marina asks, what advice would you give your younger self if you had the chance?
Don't get so frustrated if the movie isn't good. Learn how to find a happy place in the even if the movie that you happen to be on at the moment is not that great. Learn how to find that what you can control out of your work, and do that part of it. If you get stuck on something which is like, oh, this is not that good, is it? And you don't have any control to like change it. It's not your project. You're working on it for someone else. Learning how to like be okay with that, and to find out what you can do well on it and do that part really, really well. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
trying to go like, yeah, you know what? I can't change the story. I'm not the writer that, you know, I can't do that. But God damn it, I'm going to animate the hell out of this thing. You know,
Yeah.
or do my part, you know, the best I can do.
So, Anonymous asks, do you have any tips for aspiring animators in today's industry when most things are outsourced?
Yeah, so I would definitely make yourself versatile in terms of what techniques you can animate in, as far as being able to jump in and do some CG if you need to, or you know, obviously if your passion is like stop motion and that's all you ever want to do, that's completely valid. But if that's what you want to do, you need to start making connections with the folks up in Oregon, which is where all stop motion seems to happen. Yeah, other than that, yeah, making yourself really versatile, but also being willing to travel. If you really want to animate and the options are limited in the US, and then it's not like there's no animation that goes on here. There's a lot of animation that goes on in the US. A lot of it is visual effects oriented or CG. But there is occasionally some hand-drawn stuff. I mean, Titmouse Animation does hand-drawn in the US. I mean, it happens if that's all you want to do. But also be willing to go, you know what, I'm going to go to Canada because that's where I can actually get to do what I want to do. That's what I did. I came to the US from the UK, you know, to do what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. So, similarly, Anonymous asks, what are some ways aspiring animators can make their portfolios stand out in the industry?
I think just make sure that whatever you're doing, you're always telling a story, so that if you're doing a portfolio of character design, try and make sure that those characters are in positions or in poses which are, I mean, not telling like a big, long, complicated story, but I mean they are telling a story in the way that they are perhaps, you know, posed with an object or whatever it is. There's a situation going on. You can see why they're striking the attitude that they're striking. It's so much more fun to see a character that's not just shaped in a fun way, not just shaped interesting shapes, but they are they have an attitude towards something else. They have an attitude towards something in the world. And you are drawing characters in situations. In other words, you're constantly telling little stories with your drawings. That's always something that's really good to try and do, I think.
Cool. So one of our officers, Angie, asks, I love the work you did for Klaus. Who did you animate specifically in the movie, and how was it to work with Sergio Pablos?
Sergio was great. I'd never worked with him as a director before. I'd worked with him on projects as another animator, you know, at Disney. But yeah, Sergio was awesome to work with. Let's see. I don't want to become lost on this drawing. 1 second. It's going to get to me 1 second. I've got that one. I'm doing this one. And I've got this one. So I want to make sure. Okay. Yeah, no, he was great. I animated a couple of little, I animated a few shots here and there. I didn't do a lot on Klaus. But is this what I wanted to be? I think I've screwed this up. Oh, I know what I've done. Yeah, I know what I've done. Yeah, so I need to get rid of this. Yeah, I animated a little sequence when Jesper comes back and Margu is sitting on his doorstep and he gets the idea about Christmas, where he keeps going in and out of the door and like doing that. So I animated both him and Margu in that little piece right there. Then I animated stuff at the very end of the movie, but mostly Jesper. It's mostly almost consistently Jesper that I was doing. And Klaus. That was done in Harmony. That was done in.
Oh, okay.
Not in that sort of, not in that sort of TV way of doing Harmony, where you're just you're manipulating stuff. You're manipulating drawings. It was just sequential animation like I'm doing now, but they wanted to use Harmony because it gives you a really nice vectorized line, which they could then subsequently use to do a lot of the lighting that they were doing on.
Was all of the process done in Harmony, like from sketch to final?
All the animation and cleanup, yes, was done in Harmony.
Okay.
And it was inked and painted in Harmony, but then the fancy lighting stuff that they did on it was proprietary software that they developed themselves.
Okay. Anonymous also asks, what is your drawing routine like for either professional or personal work?
I don't have one. Yeah, I don't have a routine at all. I feel like I'm just constantly winging it, frankly. Yeah, that's a hard question to answer because I feel like I'm not sure I have anything that I could describe as a routine. One thing, I was always bad at keeping a sketchbook. I could never, at art school and something, it was always a chore for me to try and keep a sketchbook. It wasn't something I came to naturally.
So, I guess just if I could ask, do you do like art for fun, and is that like very different from your professional work? Like, do you animate the same way you would, or do you draw different things?
Yeah, I think when I'm doing stuff for myself, which is these days usually just boils down to doing Christmas cards and things like that. Yeah, I will usually do stuff in kind of varied styles. I like to experiment with different kinds of ways of drawing things. Kind of like pushing myself to do different kinds of styles.
Cool. Edgar asks, have you found any differences working in animation at Netflix as opposed to the rest of the industry?
What I really enjoy about working at Netflix is kind of the diversity of projects that we have, and the fact that there's different kinds of voices which are starting to be heard in animation, and different kinds of filmmakers which are kind of getting to do their thing, more for the first time. That's really cool. After a while, you kind of get bored of the same old kinds of movies from the same old kinds of directors. So it's been really awesome to kind of be at a place that wants to lean into doing a diverse kind of slate of work from a more diverse set of creators. That's kind of the most fun for me, and also very stylistically diverse too. That there's things which are hand drawn. There's things which are like CG. There's things which are weird places in the middle. There's lots of people, they just want to do like all sorts of weird stuff. So that's kind of fun.
Cool. Anonymous asks, have you ever felt imposter syndrome while you're working?
More so than I used to. When I was at the beginning, I was just too enthusiastic to feel it, and I didn't have a body of work that sort of required expectations. I actually feel more imposter syndrome now than I used to when I was younger. because I feel like now there's a bit more expectation on me to know what I'm talking about. If that makes any kind of sense at all.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question? I'm curious to know like what your typical day-to-day looks like at Netflix, if you can expand a little bit more on your role there.
I'm in sort of an artistic support role, so I get to support all the projects that come into the studio, right? So when a project does come to the studio, the creator will come into the studio and start working on it. So I will go meet with them, and we have about 30 or so projects at any one time in the coming through the studio right now. It's crazy busy. So I will meet with the creators or director or whoever it is as they come into the studio and talk over with them their vision for the project, what they want their project to be like, how they want to animate it, what style, what technique. I don't talk to them a lot about story. That's up to other people, and it's up to, but I'm there to help them get it on the screen, basically, right? I'm here to help them fulfill that vision of how they want to get it done. And it's usually pretty good for, like, especially first time creators that haven't gone through a process before. Having someone like me that's done it a lot and done a lot of different kinds of things to help them like figure out what's possible and how they can fulfill what they really want to do, at least sort of technically and visually, in terms of character design and technique, animation technique and animation style. So I'll do a lot of work like that on the inside of Netflix. So that will be just sort of meetings with folks. And sometimes I will actually jump in and do a sketch, or sometimes I will organize getting a hand-drawn test or even a CG test, proof of concept test done on something. So we'll do that sort of in-house. And then a lot of my work is actually spent outside of Netflix working with all of our partner studios, because Netflix, right now at least, doesn't do any of the animation in-house. We partner with studios all over the world to actually do the production work. So I might be talking with ImageWorks in Vancouver, or with Jamfilled in Ottawa, or Tangent or Micros, or a whole bunch of, or Cartoon Saloon. We're working with Cartoon Saloon. So I might be, talking with those crews and giving them master classes, helping to sort of up level their skills, especially if there's something very specific about a project that needs addressing. Like, oh my gosh, we really need to do like a master class on lip sync, or a master class on quadruped locomotion, or something like that, to because this project requires a very specific kind of thing, right? So that's more of my day is spent doing that kind of thing. Occasionally I get to animate a little bit.
That's super insightful. Thank you.
So with the variety of projects that you've worked on, have you found differences in working in feature film versus TV?
Any of my TV stuff has been pretty sort of visiting type artist type stuff. I've hardly ever sort of been in what you might call be in the trenches, doing a TV show for a long period of time. So I can't really speak to the experience of working in TV, in that way, on such a, like that.
Okay.
So yeah, my experience has mostly been feature, work, really, which I love.
Yeah. Cool, thank you.
But I have done stuff in CG. I've done stuff in 2D. I've never done stuff in stop motion. I don't think my back could handle it anymore. Not at my age. We're getting pretty close here. What are we up? 9:24. All right. I think we're gonna get something done. You have any other?
I do. I have many.
Oh, cool.
And we'll see what we can get through. Virginia from YouTube asks, have you ever dealt with wrist injury or something similar while animating before?
Nothing really persistent. No, I've never, hopefully, touch wood, had to suffer like carpal tunnel or anything. I've known a lot of cleanup artists that had gone through that, and I think if I'd stayed doing cleanup, and I did do cleanup at the very start of my career, I can see that might have been a problem for me. I hold my pencil fairly loosely. I don't grip it super tight. I'm also not bad at stooping too much. I sit up pretty straight. I kind of tuck my heels under the chair. It kind of forces me to sit up straight like this rather than having my feet forward and arching my back. I do have a bad back, but I think that's just because I'm overweight rather than, you know, an injury from like animating. So yeah, no, I've actually been pretty lucky, touch wood, so far, about like having to deal with that.
So Tara from YouTube asks if you could recommend a good book. I assume one that's more drawing based.
For animating, yeah, I mean, I really like Dick Williams's book, Animator Survival Kit, and I really like The Illusion of Life, the classic Disney book by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. Those were The Illusion of Life was the one I really read first when I, was really wanting to learn how to do this, and I still read it sometimes.
So Alexis from YouTube asks, when animating, you have to chameleon into different styles of the projects. Do you have any advice on how to do that? How does one pop from Beauty and the Beast to something like Steven Universe?
I definitely have to look at the art of the thing carefully and keep it close by and keep it so I don't waver from it. So with something like, Steven or something like that, I would make sure that I had those model sheets and I would have them inside of my shot sometimes, like sitting right there as another level. So it was just constantly there. So I could constantly check my drawings that were to make sure I was getting as close to being on model as I could. Sometimes that's not enough. And no matter what I'm doing, I will naturally draw something in my own way and get off model with something. And if that starts to happen, I'll try and, it's hard to see sometimes. So you have to kind of ask sometimes, am I on model? I will get help. So like on Klaus, for example, when I'm starting on Klaus, those are not too easy to draw. And the character designer, Torsten Schrank, that's very much, his character designs. And so, like a lot of animators on that show, I would just, for my first few scenes that I did, after I started to like tie down some of my key drawings a little bit, I would just send them to Torsten and say, can you draw over these, please? Get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Give yourself a leg up.
So Tara asks, earlier you talked about the importance of consuming material to keep yourself inspired and energized. What's caught your interest recently among TV, books, music, or other subjects?
What have I been watching lately?
Yeah.
I love all this Marvel stuff going on, and I was such a Spider-Man kid when I was young. I unashamedly devour all things Marvel when they come on. So I'm watching WandaVision, which is awesome. I like reading actually science books. My whole family is scientists, so I've got a bit of an inclination there. But I do like reading like non-fiction, especially evolutionary biology stuff. So I'm reading a fun book right now. Let's see, where is it? It's right here. So how to tame a fox and build a dog, which is about this awesome studies that these Russian scientists started doing back in the 60s, where they were taking foxes, and they were doing it under the guise of they weren't actually allowed to study genetics when they started this. this guy was starting to work in the fur industry, where they would like make fox furs, which is awful. But he used it as a cover to study how the domestication of dogs might have happened. And what they found was that if you just select foxes for tameness, that's the only thing you're selecting for. How tame are they? And if you get the tamest of them to breed with each other, all these other traits start to come along for the ride. So floppy ears and blotchy coats and things that you might think are very doggy things compared to wolves, they happen because of the tameness, because it's the wanting to be close to people that bring those other traits along for the ride genetically. I get off on that kind of stuff. I love it.
That's really cool. Tracy asks, do you have any advice on keeping fluidity in emotion and movement when animating a character?
Well, in movement, fluidity is all about good spacing, like following good arcs and following good slow ins and slow outs. You saw like what I was trying to do with the tail, following those curves around and making sure that the spaces of them fit together properly in that sort of nice jigsaw-y way that I was talking about. I'm not quite sure what you mean by fluidity in emotion. But I can definitely talk about what I feel like is clarity in emotion, trying to be clear with the expressions that you're doing. There are obviously certain things about the timing of how you change expressions so that the audience can see what's going on. That's important, but it's often remarked that my animation is pretty fluid. So most of that stuff is down to how I control the spacing, how I control the relationship between the drawings. And it's kind of a lot more careful than I think some people realize it is.
So somewhat related, Sunshine asks, do you have a favorite action or emotion to animate?
No, I also don't. Yeah, it's all fun. It's all kind of a challenge, really. I'm going to do this kick now. So I've kind of done this wind up where he's going to stay here for a little while. Let's see, I'm actually going to have him stay there for... And I'm actually going to do this kick. So I'm going to do... He's sort of done this wind up where he's slowed into the top here, but now I'm going to do this kick fairly fast. I'm going to do one drawing, maybe one on the acorn, and then one out here. So I think I'm going to go straight to this one I know is going to have to be there where he's sort of on the acorn. So I'm going to go and do this one first, and then go back. And fill in the rest. But this stuff is going to be coming through pretty quick. So this is a little bit more sort of straight aheady type stuff that I'm doing. So I'm gonna get this. Trying to get some dynamics into this pose here. Okay, ask another one. If you have another one.
Okay, yeah, got a few. So a few people actually wanted to know if you have any sort of online classes or any social media?
I don't really have any social media. I do have a YouTube thing that I post to occasionally. I put some pencil tests on there. I have not as yet, but it's only kind of as yet. I wouldn't mind doing like some online or at least some sort of instructional thing at some point, where I actually did this kind of thing, but much, much nicer. You know, and actually planned it out and did like proper things. Yeah, that would be a nice thing to do. But I'm not really that good on things like, you know, being on Instagram or anything like that, or Twitter, I'm afraid. I don't have Facebook. I don't have any kind of social media presence at all. Yeah. Makes me sound super old and super Luddite. But yeah, I've never really found like I wanted to for some reason. I always kind of felt like I just wanted my work to speak for itself rather than me having to talk about it. This lecture notwithstanding.
Edgar asks, do you have any favorite actors or performers that influence the performances of your characters?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I really like looking at live action actors. I've always enjoyed looking at Jack Lemmon. I don't know if any of you guys know who that is. He's I'm not even sure if he's still with us. Is Jack Lemmon even still alive? I think he is. I'd be devastated to find out if he wasn't. But yeah, I find his acting really fun from an animation perspective, because it is kind of like exaggerated sometimes, and he finds these incredibly sort of clear physical sort of poses, you know, when he's doing things. I love watching things like The Apartment. Billy Wilder's film The Apartment is an amazing thing to watch for like really sort of good Jack Lemmon type stuff. Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine.
Let me see. Is there anything in particular that you're excited for in just the future of animation, where you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited, like I said, excited about like the new kinds of voices, new kinds of filmmakers and stuff starting to really make themselves heard in animation. I'm excited about some of the new technique stuff, the new sort of mixing of technique stuff. You know, things like Into the Spider-Verse and things like that are really awesome. Kind of breaking down the barriers of what CG can look like, what hand-drawn can look like. That's super cool. So yeah, that's kind of what I like about it right now, is that there's so much potential right now with what can be achieved in animation, not just the stories, but the way that it looks.
Yeah, cool. So a couple people want to know what you animated, like what scenes or characters in Shrek 2 and on The Little Mermaid.
And Little Mermaid?
Yeah.
I started out doing a lot of stuff on King Triton in The Little Mermaid. Because Andreas Deja, who was kind of like my mentor at the beginning, was animating on Triton. So, you know, I picked up shots from him to do. So let's see. There's some terribly over animated stuff where he's like chewing her out when he finds that she's got that statue of Eric. Some stuff in there. You know, contact between the human world and the strictly from you know that. Yeah. It's like way too many poses. kind of going on a little bit all over the place. Yeah, so I did some of that. And I did a few shots of Ariel and stuff too along the way. Boom. Let's get this thing out of here. Shrek 2, yeah, again, a little bit of everything. I did a fair amount of the fairy godmother. Oh, when I did the horse, I did, because I was the horse person at that time. I guess I still am. But yeah, I did Donkey when he was a big white stallion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At least his introduction as a stallion. Not all of it. I just did like that part when he first shows up as a stallion and he gets very excited about it.
Cool. So we have a couple more technical questions from one of our professors, Jim Richardson.
Oh,
He was wondering if you could talk a little bit about using timing charts and if you use shift and trace. He wants to know just like if you use it.
Well, you're kind of seeing me do a bit of shift and trace right now, right? With like trying to get these drawings in the right place. So yes, definitely the shift and chase thing. But yeah, I can go into timing charts a little bit. Right now, you're seeing me kind of rip through a piece of animation and doing all the in-betweens myself on the fly without kind of like really showing you very well exactly what I'm doing. But if I were to chart things, and charting things for me is it's as much about like just keeping tabs on what I'm doing, but also being able to communicate to another artist what you might be doing. So doing charts for characters that you're animating is really about like communicating to another artist where you want them to put drawings that you want. So for example, like doing charts where you want the thing to accelerate and you've got 1 down here and you've got 9 down there and you've got like these accelerating tick marks that go 3, 5, 7, 9, and you want the character to be filled in along those lines. I kind of try and figure out what those are going to be while I'm doing the drawings. They're not an afterthought for me. They are, like I was talking about, like fitting that jigsaw puzzle together. I can't put these key drawings in the right spot, the parts of the body and stuff, unless I have a reasonably good idea of what this is going to be, what the charts are going to be. So working with timing charts is much about like communicating to another artist what you want them to do to follow up your work, as it is just keeping it clear in your own head what you're up to as far as how your drawings are going to be spaced. But they're not an afterthought. They are, integral part of like what you're doing all the time.
Cool. Thank you. Let's see.
Almost getting close to done something. Let's see. Got another question?
Yeah, sifting through a few. This one's another more technical one. I think we've been over character acting a bit, but Peter Fang asks, do you have any tips on lip sync and character acting in animation?
I have a whole lecture on lip sync that I do for folks. The thing to remember about lip sync, I guess, one of the things to remember is that, or one of the things I find actually books get kind of wrong is this sort of automatic belief that you have to do everything 2 frames ahead of the sound. You find that in most animation books. Like you should do your mouth shapes 2 frames ahead. And I find that that's actually a little bit of a misunderstanding a lot of the time about what the mouth actually does when it speaks. And also a bit of a legacy from the old days of what editors and track readers would do and how they would note down the sounds that they were hearing and putting them on the exposure sheets. It's a little bit of a combination of those 2 things, I think. But definitely the couple of things to remember about lip sync is making sure that you're not just flapping the jaw on every single syllable the same way. That's probably the main thing, apart from getting the timing of it right. The fact that you want to pick your accents on lip sync so that you are not on a word like, let's see, what could you say? That took a lot of courage. So saying the word courage doesn't have to be courage with 2 openings of the mouth that are the same. It's basically one big one for courage, and the ridge is said kind of as the jaw is closing. Or in more subtle work, it's ka, and then the jaw kind of stalls a bit on the way back as it says ridge, and then it and then it comes together. So definitely sort of picking your accents and making sure that you're not constantly flapping the jaw, that you've got this sort of bouncing ball or sort of elastic ball timing that's kind of going pop down and recover, pop down and recover, but you're in between these things. There's like little ones where it's going boom, 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 So you're finding those rhythms in the dialogue to make the big shapes and the little shapes. The other thing to remember is that dialogue shapes infect each other. They infect their neighbors. So that I'm saying a line like, I'm worried about Peter. You've got a couple of closed mouths in there, but the M of I'm could be kind of narrow, where the corners of the lips are coming in, because you're about to go into the W of worried. So I'm worried, so that M mouth is kind of narrow because it's been infected by its neighbors, being infected by the tight, narrow W of worried. So it's a narrow, but by the time you get to the P of Peter, it could be a wider closed mouth because you're about to go into P, which is a wider shape. So mouth shapes can kind of be infected by their neighbors. Is another thing that can be good. Now, of course, dialogue can be done in all different kinds of styles. You can have very symbolic, very kind of like staccato dialogue. Look at Wallace and Gromit or something, where they've got this standard way of doing this wide, gritty teeth mouth, and they constantly go in and out of these very stock shapes, and that's the style. That's good. I'm talking about more full, fluid, sort of more realistic kind of dialogue, right? When I'm talking about some of these things. But yeah, the understanding that things like staccato type mouth shape or like impact like mouth shapes, for example, in books, you often see that they'll give you a drawing of a T mouth shape, and they'll have the tongue up at the top of the mouth, right? But T is not the sound that your tongue makes when it hits the roof of your mouth. And K is not the sound made by the tongue hitting the back of the roof of your mouth. K is the sound your tongue makes when it separates from the roof of your mouth. And T is the sound that is made when your tongue separates from the roof of your mouth. So the shape that you see in the book is actually a preparation to say T. And the shape that you see for K is actually a preparation to make the K sound. The sound actually comes when the tongue separates. So that leads to a lot of like, oh, it's out of sync because it's not early enough. It's a misunderstanding of what the mouth actually does when it speaks.
Okay, that's interesting. I never realized that's why that was.
I'll get off my lip sync soapbox now.
No, it's very cool to hear about. So, Anonymous asks, if you weren't an animator, what would your other career be?
Paleontologist.
Oh, I love that. Dinosaurs are great. Another anonymous asks,
I think when I was about like,
Oh.
I think maybe if I, or my mom probably would have said like when I was like 8 or 9, she said, "Oh, you might be a dancer," but that definitely not. Although I really do like dance, not doing it, watching it.
Another anonymous asks, what's your opinion on animating quadrupeds versus bipeds? Like, do you have a favorite?
It's twice as hard, it's twice as many legs. I really like animating quadrupeds. I'm not as intimidated by it as much as I used to be, having intentionally gone through that spirit kind of boot camp, which I kind of made up for myself in order to get better at it. So I actually really enjoy the prospect of doing it right now than I used to, whereas it was a little bit intimidating before. So yeah, I actually kind of really like animating quadrupeds, probably more than I like animating humans, at least at the moment.
Cool.
I'm not even sure this looks like a squirrel anymore. I kind of doubt it. I don't think it does. It's sort of morphed as I've gone along.
So Ashley Sanchez asks, is there a way to know when you're really ready to apply to the animation industry?
Oh. I mean, obviously, I think like the work has to be of a certain standard. I think to like, there's nothing bad about applying at any time, really, even if it's just to get feedback of like how you might want to improve. So I think the industry as a whole is always very willing to like, guide people that just want to know like how they might want to improve or like where they should need to be. I've found that to be the case that most people are pretty friendly in animation. They want to like help people that are just starting out. But there's no definitive way for you to know, when you're hireable. I guess other than just kind of like comparing your work to what you see out there, what you see on the screen, and feeling like, yeah, I can do that, or not. Like, and if you're, even if you're like, yeah, I'm really worried that I couldn't do it, you're probably better than you think you are. So I would, yeah, that's a hard one to answer, actually. Exactly like when you think you're ready.
Yeah.
I would say you're ready when you really want to do it.
So in a similar sort of vein, Michael Garcia wants to know if there are any recommendations for any sort of apprentice or industry learning opportunities for animators who want to get better.
Let's see. So I think actually some of the best stuff is like Animation Mentor or things like where you're learning online. It's not bad. I think it's good to try and get into a studio setting where you can, if not sort of apprentice, you can at least start in a position that can help you learn, like in a more sort of assistant position or cleanup or something like that, like in this, a more junior animator or something like that. So I found I just kind of learned on the job, really, is what I ended up doing.
Ape from YouTube asks, at what point were you able to think about the in-betweens while working on the keys? I think you touched on that a bit, about being able to do that at some point.
Yeah. I think, so actually, some of the best stuff I think it took me, after I'd animated maybe, I don't know, it's hard to, you can either talk about it in years or you can talk about it in how many minutes you've animated. But I think, you know, at least for me, at least, and I believe it's the sort of thing that actually came fairly quickly to me. You know, it definitely took me a couple of years before I was like, oh yeah, I need to thinking of more than just the part that I'm drawing. I need to be actually thinking ahead. It wasn't really like, oh wow, I can just see all the in-betweens, like some sort of weird sort of, you know, beautiful mind weird thing. It's more like, I need to start thinking ahead, really is what it is. It's like, I just need to start planning this out, planning out the ramifications of what I'm doing a little bit more.
Rihanna asks if you have any tip on just networking yourself.
Oh, something I've always been pretty bad at. Networking, because I'm a bit of a hermit, you know, the no social media person, right? But I will say that it's a really good thing to do. It's it's a really good thing to be able to not sort of be obsequious and like you know, get up in people's business, but it is good to try and make connections with folks in the industry, so that you become a little bit more known to them. And you don't have to do it in sort of this horrible pushy way, but it is good to, like, you know, contact, if it's a big studio, they'll have a recruiting department, is actually contact someone in that department and say, hey, I would really like to like send you my portfolio so that I know you might not be hiring right now, but I want you to have it so you've got it, and keep me in mind. And if there's anyone I can talk to about it, please let me know. You can definitely kind of do things like that, because the sooner they can like put a face or a person to the work, the better off you are. Because if it's just work online and it's nothing else, that can be okay as long as the work is incredible. Right? But sometimes it's even better for someone to go like, oh yeah, I like that person's work. Oh, you know what? I met them at CTN or something, and they were actually really nice. You know, if they have a face to attach the work to, it's even better. And how are we doing on this? Oh, I've got this whole big long thing here. I might just want to put one more drawing in there. I'm going to do 9:58. I hope no one has to disappear immediately, because I'm going to do about 2 or maybe 3 more very scribbly quick in between drawings. And then we're going to press play. Do you guys have any, while I do these last 3, do you have any like little questions, any others?
I did have a question. It's more of a silly question about the genesis of the Adventure Time James Baxter horse.
Oh yeah. So I was doing a lecture, a little bit like one of these, at Cal Arts, when Penn Ward, who created Adventure Time, was at Cal Arts. And for the longest time, and when I asked for something to animate, someone yelled out from the back of the hall, hey, do a horse balancing on a ball, as a bit of a challenge, a bit of a, you know, do that. That's hard. And I didn't know who it was for the longest time. And then when Penn, you know, said, hey, I've got this idea, you know, that I want you to do, because I later on, after he left school and had been working in the industry, and then he developed this show, and I said how much I liked the show, and he said like later on, hey, I've got this idea. I realized, actually found out only recently that it was, I think it was actually him that yelled that out in that class.
Oh, that's so funny.
So yeah, he said, yeah, I've got this idea for this character. I want you to animate it and I want you to do the voice. And I said, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. I'd love to do that. So yeah, I did the voice and did the animation. At least I did all the animation in the first episode of James Baxter the Horse. And then did not all of it, but you know, about half of it in the second episode of him. But yeah, it came out of one of these lectures.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing.
I'm gonna do, I think, one more.
We are at 10. Do you want to just finish what you're doing, or would you like any more questions while you do that?
No, there's some more questions. It's at least one more.
Okay. So Maria asks, do you think that knowing how to animate is a valuable thing to learn if someone would like to become a storyboarder?
Oh, it's not vital. At least doing some animation, I think, can help you if you're doing boards, because it helps you understand, especially about the practicalities of timing and stuff. Like board artists that have never done any animation can sometimes board things that when it gets to the animation department, it's a bit like, there's no way I can do that in the time allotted. There's way too much ground to cover here, or like not having sort of any experience at all about, like, you know, that you might have to, you know, take 4 steps to get to the door and how long that's going to take you. Sometimes can be, you know, it can be an advantage for a board artist to have some kind of animation experience, even if it's not professional, even if it's just like, I know the basics, right? So I can at least board something which is going to be animatable. So yeah, it is kind of valuable.
Cool, thank you.
All right, that was the last one, and let's see what we got. I'm just going to flip through the whole thing first. Let's go back to the beginning. So him, we didn't get to do him coming in, but that's okay. And we got the thing coming down. You know, I'm actually going to drag this out and give us a bit more time at the beginning. Yeah. So this comes in, smacks him on the head. What? Why I oughta. Oink. Anyway.
So cool.
Okay, I'm going to press play. And I really apologize if your internet does not show you every frame when I do this. Doink. I don't know. Is it playing for anyone, even in the least bit smoothly?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's playing. Cool. That's awesome.
That's so cool. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. This was fun. I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
If you want to do like anything else, like in the future, if you want to like do a quadruped locomotion lecture or a lip sync lecture or something like that, let me know. We can do another one. It doesn't have to be 3 hours. It could be just like an hour or something if you want.
That sounds amazing.
Great.
But
thank you.
Let me know if you want to do anything else.
Everyone in the chat is very excited.
Oh yeah. I can finally get the chat back up here and see. Very cool. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Maybe, you know, maybe one day I can actually visit you in person. That might be cool.
That
would be great. Yeah.
But we can do that kind of thing again. It would be nice. But thank you, Madison. Thank you, Melinda. Thank you, Keely. Thank you, Sabi. Thanks for everyone there.
Thank you, James. And thanks for everyone coming.